Good afternoon and welcome to Eat Lunch Give. My name is Kay Calvert and I'm the board chair at Women's Lunch Place. Thank you for taking the time to attend our virtual luncheon and thank you for your support. Before we get started, I'd like to talk a little bit about who we are and what we do. Women's Lunch Place opened in 1982. We've grown considerably over the years, but our mission and vision remain largely the same. Our mission is to be a safe, welcoming day shelter community, providing nutritious food and individualized services for women who are experiencing homelessness or poverty. We meet our guests where they are and treat them with dignity and respect. We envision a world where every woman has access to safe, affordable housing and 3 nutritious meals a day. Here are some of the services we provide our guests. We create hundreds of healthy meals each day, served in our dining room at socially distanced tables or curbside in to-go boxes. We are still delivering 1,000 meals per week across the city to partner organizations in need. Our amazing direct care staff work each day to build relationships with guests and provide emergency clothing, hygienic essentials, and fresh laundry, among many other services. Skilled advocates, on-site and remote, address both short-term and long-term issues. These include housing, domestic violence, accessing benefits, job searches, and much, much more. Healthcare, ranging from first aid to primary care, is offered free of charge by our partners at Boston Healthcare for the Homeless program. And very soon, our Creative Expressions program and Resource Center, which have been operating remotely, will reopen in person. In April, we return to our signature restaurant-style service in the dining room. We continue to celebrate these successes and are focused on fully restoring our community. Our journey last year was one we couldn't have prepared for, and the road to this moment was long and challenging. The strength and resilience of our guests has been truly inspiring to witness. As you can imagine, the pandemic caused even further damage to their quality of life as rates of hunger and housing insecurity skyrocketed. Despite the enthusiasm and excitement at a return to normalcy, we're keeping a keen eye on the challenges that lie ahead. Today, even more women are experiencing homelessness and poverty, and they need our help. With your support here today, we can continue to expand our services and meet the rising demands. I would now like to thank and welcome our co-chairs, Lillian Sanikas and Pamela Abega.
Hi everyone, I'm Lillian Sanikas, Advisory Committee Member at the Women's Lunch Place.
And I'm Pamela Abega, also on the Advisory Committee at WLP, and we're honored to be able to welcome you to Eat Lunch Give as a co-host of this event.
Thank you all so much for joining us today. The money donated through this fundraiser directly supports the community that Women's Lunch Place serves, with a specific focus on the growing issue of food insecurity. Food insecurity has quadrupled since the start of COVID. When someone is food insecure, it means they have little to no access to affordable, healthy meals. Our work in ensuring that guests have the sustenance they need to improve their quality of life has never been needed more than it is right now.
Today, you'll get to step inside the Women's Lunch Place Shelter and Advocacy Center and hear about the need that we're seeing from staff members of each department. Not only will you get to spend some time inside WLP, you also visit the kitchen of James Bird, award-winning chef, and longtime Women's Lunch Place supporter, Anna Sortoon, the recipient of this year's Women Who Give Award.
You'll learn how Chef Sortoon has embodied the mission of Women's Lunch Place in her community building work and the support she has shown her staff throughout the pandemic. We're thrilled that Anna will be joining us for a roundtable discussion with Executive Director Jennifer Hanlon-Wiggin and Dr. Jesse Gaida, the Chief Medical Officer for Boston Healthcare for the Homeless program. These 3 local leaders will discuss how nutrition and community play essential roles in the health outcomes for Women's Lunch Place guests.
For many of these women we see on a daily basis, these outcomes are truly a matter of life or death. At the end of today's program, you'll hear from a few of our guests. They'll tell you why they rely on WLP and how our warm community and experts' advice are critical to their survival.
Before we get rolling, we'd like to do a few thank yous. First, thank you to our sponsors for believing in the WLP mission and making today's event possible. To our host committee, thank you for your time and energy in planning this event and spreading the word throughout the city and the greater Boston area. And finally, to our donors, thank you for your generosity and support. Your contributions will help Women's Lunch Place meet each of their guests right where they are and provide the critical assistance they need going forward.
One last thing before we begin, you should see a button below the video that reads Pick a Prize. If you click that button, you can make a $25 donation for a chance to win the prize of your choice. The donation you make increases your odds of winning. There are some amazing local gift baskets available and an unlimited supply of tickets, so make sure you enter and pick a prize before the day is over.
We hope you all enjoy the program.
When I think about the women that we serve, I'm always thinking about the increased demand for our services and how we can continue to meet that need. We have so many women coming to us with such critical need. Our women are experiencing homelessness, a lot of them mental illness, substance use, a history of trauma, now all of that on top of a global pandemic. And so they're experiencing so much, and we just want to continue to be able to meet that need. Which means individualized services for each woman who comes, making sure that everyone is safe and comfortable, accessing the services that they need. And again, it's just continuing to meet that growing demand. I think Women's Lunch Place is really uniquely positioned to meet those needs because we're so low threshold, barrier free. Anyone who wants to access services is able to come to us. We're not turning anyone away. There's no set time limit for services. We've known some of our ladies for many, many years. When I think about Women's Lunch Place staff, I just think about incredibly dedicated, hardworking, compassionate people who are really here because they want to be. And I think our ladies know that, they feel that. It helps us form relationships with them, that we start to build trust. Our staff's incredible. I could go on, but we're always looking at training. We're looking at increasing capacity and having new skills on board. But I don't have to worry about our staff.
So we would decide who would approach the guest, and then the guest would, walk slowly over to the guest. Hey, how are you doing? What's your name? Sometimes, because some like to keep anonymous, they'll give a fake name, or they'll just be like, I'm just here, and we'll be like, okay, are you hungry? Do you need a shower? Let me show you around the place. And depending on what the responses are, if they are eager to be immersed into our community, then we can work super quickly with them. But if not, then it would be a thing of feeling them out and trying to meet them where they're at. So if they only want to just come in for a meal, then we let them be. And then, we'll come and talk and let them know that whatever their needs are, please come and look for us. It doesn't have to be right away, but do come and see us, and we'll try to take care of what needs to happen. A lot of times it takes us to continuously approach them. So even if it's uncomfortable, you just want to continue to check in on them, make sure, because one day they are going to open up and let you know what their needs are. It's just a matter of feeling comfortable, and that's our job, is to kind of welcome them with open arms so that they know that they are truly in a safe place. I do have a personal story from like 2 years ago, and I did work with a guest independently, and she was out by the dumpster in the back, and she would only sit back there, and we would come in and I would say hi. She would never respond. So it took me coming in every morning and saying hello to her, and her having her Dunkin' Donuts cup that she found, and just asking to get some coffee. So I would get her the coffee, and then she got so comfortable she would come in to get the coffee, and would sit at the table. And from there it turned into, hey, after you have your coffee, how about a shower? And she's like, why not? So the shower turned into, you want some clean clothes? Yes. And so it took about a year and some change to get her to where she felt comfortable enough to not only wash clothes, shower, but to ask for help and actually get someone to work with her to get her house. And so now she's in a room. She's happy. She walks around. She comes and sees us every so often. But more often than not, she's just, enjoying life, and she seems very well. And every time I see her, I just want to make sure that she's okay. So I'm like, anything you need? She's like, you guys helped out a lot. There's nothing that I need at the moment, but if I do, I know to come to you all. So yeah, that makes me super happy because she's not very vocal, but the times that she does let you know that she's grateful is in few words, and you can see it in her face, and I think that's enough for me.
So some of the challenges that our clients face in seeking affordable housing is that there is just a lack of affordable housing. We're also discussing that some of our guests also have evictions on record. Some have criminal backgrounds, and at times many of our clients have a low credit score that impacts their ability to secure housing. I think what makes our advocacy department so amazing is that we're able to work through some of these complex issues by sealing criminal records, boosting up credit scores, and also collaborating with other agencies in securing affordable housing. But at the end of the day, we just never give up on our clients. And that's what makes it so rewarding when we're able to see our clients in their own apartment, living the life that they were supposed to live.
We have a scratch kitchen here, which means that we make everything here. We don't take things out of the freezer and put them in the microwave, for example, and we're very proud of that. We have fresh fruit for our ladies every day, usually 2 servings of fresh fruit every day, and then at least 2 servings of a vegetable every day. Whole grains, which means brown rice and whole grain breads, things like that. Lots of water if they want it, and lean proteins, fresh vegetables.
I'm Jennifer Hanlon-Wigan, Executive Director at Women's Lunch Place. I'd like to thank everyone who is joining us for this fundraiser and contributing to our cause. This is a pivotal moment. The women we serve are currently faced with obstacles that will be nearly impossible to clear without our help. The work we are engaged in with our guests could not exist without you and the incredible network of support that we have at Women's Lunch Place. Today, we have the pleasure of honoring a special member of our community with this year's Women Who Give Award. Traditionally, this award is given to a local woman who embodies our mission and works tirelessly to strengthen those around her. I am so pleased to present the 2021 Women Who Give Award to Chef Anna Sortoon. Anna has been a longtime supporter of Women's Lunch Place, most notably as the celebrity chef at one of our signature supper club dinners. Like many leaders in the food industry, Chef Sortoon has navigated massive challenges over the past year. While many other businesses closed their doors, Anna made the tough decision to shift her operations and remain open. She prioritized her staff and her customers and showed the type of strength, resilience, and hope that we value so highly at Women's Lunch Place. We admire Anna's decision to struggle through the adversity. This is a choice we witness every day at Women's Lunch Place. Despite personal and systemic barriers, our guests decide to persevere. Anna is also a community builder, and like us, her community was jeopardized in so many vital ways. As we emerge from COVID with newfound strengths, we expect to see Chef Sortoon continuing to represent Boston on the national stage as a strong, smart, fearless, and creative woman who puts her people above all else. We are incredibly proud of Chef Sortoon for making it through the worst of the pandemic, and we are so glad we can once again join her in her beloved restaurants, Oleana, Sofra, and Sarma. Congratulations, Anna, and thank you for all that you do.
I'm Anna Sortoon, and you're at Oleana Restaurant in Cambridge. I remember a very key person on our team saying, kind of scratching her head and wondering, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And I said, well, we're going to do takeout, of course. And she said to me, well, what's the point? And then I thought like long and hard, and I was like, really? Like, what's the point? Like jobs, and this is what we do. This is all we do. And if we have to do takeout to get through this, the point is to keep people's jobs. And so that really was my and my business partner's motivation to keep going, because it wasn't just about doing what we love to do. Obviously, it was more about jobs and people being okay. And then there was a point where we were worried about many people who weren't able to collect unemployment, who were delayed in collecting unemployment, trying to raise money and look after them. But without jumping into takeout, it wouldn't have been possible. We would have just closed. For me, it was always really clear that we needed to try to figure it out, and that I wasn't ready to just me personally, in the situation that we were in at that time, I wasn't ready to just close for a few months. I know that a lot of people didn't have a choice, and I feel really lucky that we even could consider both. But I think above all, what was our motivating factor a year ago today, in April, was jobs. There was a moment, especially with the farm, that was just incredibly overwhelming. I can't figure out if it was the sort of people at home cooking a lot, people afraid to go to the grocery store and loving the home delivery option, or people always wanting to join a CSA, heard about it, now is sort of the time, and hey, they deliver, or let's be healthier, let's eat more vegetables during the pandemic. Or the planet and the whole sort of the big little farm scenario where, hey, if we buy from a local farm, we are actually contributing to something that helps the planet, sort of the anti-global warming situation. If we can do that, then we've actually done way more than just recycling. We've really committed. So I think like between those, I couldn't really get to the bottom of it. But what I was feeling was the biggest sense of community I've ever felt in my life. And then when the farm sort of transferred the favor to us and said, okay, here comes the winter. How can we help you? Could you do a box? Could we, help you sell it like a CSA subscription? And so we had then came up with the community shared restaurants, right? Or it was exactly the same model, and it was being delivered. Within 24 hours, we were sold out of these shares. There has been 500 people on the waiting list since we've done them. The first couple weeks I was doing them, when we were packing them, I was literally in tears thinking, oh my God, these people have promised. They basically promised to eat our food once a week for 3 months. That's like huge. And that's huge. And what if they want Chinese food? Or what if they've made this commitment, right? Or what if they've got, all these vegetables to cook from Sienna Farms? And anyhow, it was very moving, but I think we, just like that feeling of community with the farm, we sort of live and breathe that there. And that's what the farm really relies on to sustain itself. But we really felt that sense of community. Yeah, I think that hits home for everyone. And it was one of the most interesting experiences I've had, just cooking in that kitchen and seeing what Sherry does and her job day to day, and getting to know some of the women that are moving and shaking in there that make it happen every day. I loved it. It's so incredibly necessary. It was heartwarming. It was delicious. It was fun. It was funny. Everybody had a great time. It's another example of togetherness, but I honestly think it is the mission and philosophy, but it's also the amazing ladies that are there right now that are leading it and moving it and shaking it and doing what, they obviously have a great time working together. And I think it shows. People that have supported Women's Lunch Place, especially during this time, I cannot imagine a more need for these women than now. Being able to go someplace where they feel safe, and they're, with all the anxiety in the air and all the virus challenges on top of the challenges that they already have, to be able to have this place be so sacred and still available to them, I think is pretty. I mean, everyone who's helped is literally a form of an angel or something. It's lots of gratitude for that, for sure.
Thank you, Anna, for sharing some of your time with us and for joining us for the next part of our presentation today, a roundtable discussion on nutrition and community health. Joining Chef Sortoon and I for the roundtable will be Dr. Jesse Gaida, the Chief Medical Officer for Boston Healthcare for the Homeless program, our healthcare partner at Women's Lunch Place. Dr. Gaida has spearheaded numerous initiatives to rethink how we approach care for individuals with complex health conditions, particularly when these conditions are exacerbated by severe poverty, racism, trauma, and social stigma. We are grateful to have the Healthcare for the Homeless staff at WLP every day to address both short and long-term health issues for our guests, as well as to provide access to a full suite of mental and physical health services. I am thrilled to have Chef Sortoon and Dr. Gaida with me to discuss the effects that food and community have on our lives. We hope you enjoy the conversation. Well, Anna and Jesse, thank you so much for joining me here today for the roundtable.
Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you both.
Thank you.
So Jesse, let me start with you. We are so pleased to be fellow collaborators with Healthcare for the Homeless at the St. Francis House Auxiliary Shelter. One of your case managers shared that a guest told her the meals from WLP saved their life. They said they've never felt better and they even like tofu now. Can you share from a public health perspective the value of regular access to nutritious and, in our case, delicious meals?
Sure, and we're so thrilled also to be able to partner with Women's Lunch Place. The value of regular nutritious meals from a public health point of view really can't be overstated. It is like foundational to a person's health to have access to nutritious meals on a regular basis, and that's so unusual for people experiencing homelessness. I was thinking about kind of what typical nutrition looks like for people who are homeless, and even in Boston. If you're getting your meals from shelters, it's often the case that your meals are very high in carbohydrates and very high in fats. And with so many shelters, necessarily getting their food from food banks and donations, and without more resource for nutritious food, the meals that we're often serving people have very high caloric, are very high in calories and have very little nutritional value. There's very little protein, there's very little minerals and vitamins that are important for so many parts of our health. And even the portion sizes that we tend to give are often a little bit more than they should be, ironically. They're kind of larger portion sizes. I think when we're serving meals at a shelter, we often kind of heap on food because it feels good to give. And on the receiving end of that meal, if you're not sure where your next meal is coming from, you're often going to hoard food. And so there's actually a sort of ironic epidemic of obesity among homeless people. And so I guess all of that to say that I can't really overstate how important nutrition is to a person's health, and that for people experiencing homelessness without regular access to their own kitchen and enough resource to buy healthy food, I think so much of the chronic disease problems that we see elevated among homeless people, even in Boston, cancers, heart disease, diabetes, hypertension, is very related to their inability to access highly nutritious food.
Thanks. That's so important. Anna, well, your business model is obviously not driven by public health concerns. You develop beautiful, culturally centered menus. From ingredients to sourcing, how do you approach nutrition?
I think that's a great question. It's not too far off. I've always been a real stickler for a philosophy of cooking that, I think when everybody sets out to cook something delicious, the first thing they want it to be is delicious, right? That's all they really care about. Like most of all, it's got to taste good. And that's pretty easy because there's a lot of cheap tricks like Jess was talking about, like fat and sugar is a big one too, right? But I think as somebody who cooks for a lot of different kinds of people every night, I feel like there's a responsibility to do more. And the second thing you would look at when you're trying to achieve something that you're really happy with, right? Besides being delicious, is how it looks. Third thing you might think about is maybe texture. You want something kind of interesting that's like crunchy and soft, or, you might look at that. But the last thing I think people think about, to be honest, when they're trying to achieve something delicious is how they're going to feel afterwards. And that really comes down to, some of the things we try to use, like spices, and also the whole philosophy of Mediterranean cuisine, allows you to make rich food without it being heavy. So there is a lot of thought around how people will feel after they eat, but also too on the integrity of the ingredients, being a real driver for us. And that to me is a big, public health thing too, is just the quality of the food that, like a homemade meal versus, something that's very, a homemade meal like the women's lunch place is getting versus something that's, off the shelf at 7-Eleven is just night and day, right? So I think in a restaurant where you're trying to achieve flavor and have people feel good after they're done eating is a fun challenge for all of us.
Yeah, I know at Women's Lunch Place, we're very proud that we're a scratch kitchen, and the variety of fruits and vegetables that we use, and as you said, herbs and spices and, different cultural menus. So that's, definitely plays out. So Jesse, one intentional aspect of WLP is our restaurant style service for our meals. And our founders actually considered that avoiding lines was one way to reduce anxiety and stress, especially for women who are experiencing mental health challenges. So how does Healthcare for the Homeless approach your delivery of medical services to vulnerable women, many of whom have experienced trauma and abuse?
That's such a good question. It's a big challenge that we have. And I so appreciate the strategy that WLP uses to just improve the experience of the participants. From a healthcare point of view, the women in our practice are suffering much higher rates of a number of cancers, much higher rates of substance use disorders, and much higher rates of heart disease than people in the general population in Boston. And there's so much medical care that is really important for folks. But you're right that there are a lot of barriers that women in particular face, and some of those you've alluded to. So in terms of just approaching medical services, I guess I would say we are often needing to basically, even though we might have an agenda for what we really want to accomplish with a certain patient related to their chronic diseases or risks that they might have for things that we want to screen for, like cervical cancer and breast cancer, despite that agenda that we might have as medical providers, we know that the women who are coming into care with us have typically an acute need that is most important to them. And one strategy that we employ just to improve engagement with people is to try to address those acute needs that someone has. It's often a wound that they have that they need taken care of, or something that's very pressing to them, that we know we need to address that first. We need to sort of get that taken care of before we can then have conversations about screening and doing preventive care, or conversations about treating a chronic disease that may not bother them moment to moment, like hypertension, that we know is so important in terms of risk for heart disease. And yet it's not something that is feels pressing to them, especially since they're struggling to meet basic survival needs. Those are always going to trump issues that might happen way down in the future. So I think working with programs like Women's Lunch Place that helps to meet the basic survival needs of food, for example, really helps us then go a little bit deeper in terms of preventative care and chronic disease management.
That's great. I mean, that's why I think our partnership is so valuable, so that we can balance out those needs for our guests. So Anna, our staff and volunteers, you've been in our kitchen, you've seen this. We carefully plate our meals, we dress them with herbs, and we wipe stray sauce from the plate. And with the pandemic, we had to suspend our community meals, and we had to ship to takeout containers and curbside service. It felt very unnatural. So how did you balance the need to modify that hospitality aspect of your service with public safety guidelines and obviously concerns for your clientele?
Yeah, I think, wow, yeah. That was an odd feeling in the beginning, but I feel like very quickly we began to find footing and purpose, and it wasn't what we knew, but then, so the pandemic wasn't what we knew either. So, I think I remember, really deeply questioning myself, are we essential? Do we, should we be putting ourselves at risk? Because, at a Women's Lunch Place, there's no question, if you guys stopped, there would have been, people could have died from starvation. I mean, but for us, it was more like, trying to feel as though we were essential, doing something completely different from what we're used to, like just relying on a lot of takeout in the beginning, and also just going through the process of learning new systems too. But it very quickly became apparent that there was a need, just people that were really busy with families with kids at home, and not a lot of time or energy left to cook, quite frankly, or just feeling a little down and needing some assistance or a pick me up. And so, yeah, very quickly we found a way to really find purpose and really feel essential, during this whole thing. And did we, we definitely got used to putting things in boxes, and actually sometimes it looks kind of cool, and you know what I mean, but it's not, I certainly can't wait till we can all sit around a table again and not worry when we take our masks off, etc. But yeah, it was pivoting. It was some very deep, thoughtful questions, but yeah, I think, feeding people is essential for sure.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. Jesse, we all know that this pandemic has been challenging and unpredictable. And at Women's Lunch Place, I know we're just really proud that we were able to keep all our core services running and serving our guests. What's the emotional toll, though, of this unpredictability on our guests? And then conversely, what's the value of a safe, stable community in supporting positive health outcomes, for women who are experiencing homelessness?
Those are such good questions. And thinking about the emotional toll of the unpredictability of the last year, and how that has maybe been magnified for women who don't have stable housing. I was thinking about the fact that, isolation has been such an important part of the public health response to preventing COVID, and yet for people without homes or in crowded homes, it's really impossible to isolate. And so I think that probably the emotion that I've witnessed the most among our patients is just a severe anxiety around being able to prevent themselves from getting sick, or if they do get sick, of getting the care that they need. So the emotional toll of just a fear and anxiety about infection when you're necessarily in more crowded spaces of shelters or street life, or more crowded housing, has been probably front and center for people. But there's so many other emotions. I think people are feeling less connected to their support systems. And if your support system is, in part, social service agencies or medical providers who are helping you navigate things, and you can't see them in person as often, especially if you don't have reliable access to a phone or the internet, which so many of our patients don't, then the isolation, I think, takes another type of very deep emotional toll. And it's magnified really for people that don't have safe and stable housing. You asked conversely about the value of community right now, and it's just so important. I think it might be the most important thing. I mean, community really at its essence is connection to other human beings, and at a time where you're scared and sad, like, connection to other human beings and community is, there's nothing more important than that. So I think it's just critical. And I'm thinking about the type of community that is provided at WLP. It's a place not only where you can experience community, but it's in such a dignified way, and such a respectful way. And so, whereas, so many of the services that the clients and participants might be getting elsewhere are important, they're not always quite as dignified and respectful, and also unique for women. And so I just think there's such a special void that your program is filling. But community is the most important thing right now.
It's so true. And I know for our staff, connecting our guests to technology was really important during this time, and just increasing our outreach. So it is, you can build community in different ways if you have to, but it's vital. You're right. As I sort of reflect back on March 2020, I honestly and truly did not know how and if WLP would make its way forward. There was just so much uncertainty. And I'm incredibly grateful for our creative and resilient staff and all the pivots they made and creative ways that they approached our work. And I'm also grateful for the generosity of our volunteers, our donors, our guests, and our collaborators across the city. And they've really allowed us to survive and thrive. So can each of you share, if and how you've experienced one of those silver linings of a pandemic, and what that was? Maybe Anna first.
Yeah, I just think a lot more time to reflect deeply, and a lot more time to appreciate the small things like, where the food is coming from. And I think that was and the planet and things that, we've been sort of, really forced to come to a screeching halt and look closely at everything we were doing, and everything about our choices. And I think a lot of really great things for our businesses. Lots of silver linings, for the hospitality industry and the restaurant industry going forward. Less of a gap between the service staff and the kitchen staff in wages, and a much more sense of oneness in a restaurant and teamwork.
Jesse?
I had a long list of silver linings. I'm trying to think about how to narrow it down. Just the sharp focus on inequities that we've seen with COVID infection and deaths among people of color all over the globe, really. But in Boston and in Massachusetts, I think that's a silver lining in terms of just really bringing inequities, racial and ethnic inequities to the forefront, which was predictable, and it was really clear that was going to happen. But I think bringing that into sharp focus has helped us look at so much else in our public health infrastructure and healthcare infrastructure from an equity lens, and that's a major silver lining.
Yeah, I agree. That's such an important basis of our work at Women's Lunch Place, and we do feel like there's more community voice and focus on that more than ever. So, well, thank you both so much for joining me. I think it's the best conversation I've had on food and community in a long time, and I know we've been through a lot, but we have a lot to be hopeful for. So thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
Great to be with you.
It's so funny, everybody does this same thing with this flower.
Did everyone else do that too?
Everyone moves the
Okay,
flower.
let's do it. Let's do it.
So you can put the flower wherever you want.
I'm gonna put it right here.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, we'll have to do like an analysis of what that means. Where the flower is.
Yeah, and is it close to you or far away?
Yeah, right.
From Women's Lunch Place.
Yeah.
I think it's the love, the attention, the care about all the stuff. And my apartment, yes, my brand new apartment. Yeah, I just got a Women's Lunch Place, made my dreams come true. Thank you so much, Women's Lunch Place. Thank you so much, everybody that is involved. So I'm so glad. Thank you, God. Thank you, Women's Lunch Place. Thank you, Doris. Thank you. Oh, well, honestly, as great as the food is, and it is great. It's healthy, it's balanced, it's fresh. As much as I come for the food, I also come for the interaction with the staff, because every staff person to a person are warm, engaging, respectful, things you really don't get out in the rest of the world. It's just, when you don't have that in any other area of your life, and then you get it, I'll tell you what, you run to it, because it's really, really important. Human dignity is really important.
It just takes your worries away until you walk back out the door. You come in here and it's actually a time to pretty much kind of forget what's going on, because you're treated so kindly.
Oh, absolutely. I'm always in a better mood. I'm never really in a really bad mood, but it's so funny. Yesterday, I had all these Earth, Wind, and Fire songs running through my head. I'm like, what? Where did that come from? I'm like, duh, they played music here. And they had Bruno Mars, Earth, Wind, and Fire. I mean, just really happy, upbeat music. And so, yeah. So, yeah, I'm always grateful. I'm always like, what a lovely group of people. And it just brings me up.
It's unbelievable, from not even the time you walk in, from the sidewalk It's unbelievable the kindness that I have received here. And I'm talking about from outside the door. I don't even have to come in to feel good. It's from the sidewalk. And the things you guys do, the way you go about it, the cleanliness of the place. I mean, I'm like, maybe I should be mopping the floor after we eat or something, you know, pay my dues or something, because it's outstanding. I don't think there's anything else you guys could do here to make me leave feeling like I feel.
So I was working with Doris about a year or less, I don't know, maybe. And she's so, oh my God, she's, how to say, she's amazing. She's a very, very good person, patient, you know, so yes, she's powerful.
When we first came here, everybody was nice to us. They did our laundry, we had breakfast, we sit here for lunch. And to me, this place is like one of the best places in Massachusetts right now for anybody going through homelessness, especially, well, the females, you know. And they pamper, you get to get pampered over here. You know, nobody asks to be homeless. Everybody have different problems, you know. So with this corona, things are really bad out here. Bad. This is the best shelter to come. And for any organization out there that wants to give donation, please give it. Because this place is the best place for a woman to come, you know, and may God bless us all, and I hope we all make it.
Hi, everyone. We're nearing the end of our program here today, and we can't let you go without talking about the impact you can make right now with a gift to Women's Lunch Place. We'll be running through a few suggested donation levels and the impact they will provide for women experiencing hunger, poverty, and homelessness in Boston.
First, a donation of $5,000 will allow Women's Lunch Place's Healthy Meals program to continue scaling up the nutrition they are providing to their community. Right now, WLP is preparing about 200 meals per day at the shelter and another 1,200 per week for delivery to isolated individuals across the city. With food insecurity at an all-time high due to the pandemic, WLP expects to see more and more women turning to them for help. A gift of $5,000 will ensure that we can meet that increased demand and provide sustenance for women who are newly food insecure.
A donation of $2,500 will enable the advocacy team to secure and stabilize the housing of the women's WLP serves. Along with food insecurity, there have been massive increases in housing destabilization throughout the pandemic, which means that Women's Lunch Place work has only just begun. A gift of $2,500 will help WLP advocates fight for the dignity of their clients and navigate the many barriers that prevent guests from having a stable home.
A donation of $1,000 will provide Women's Lunch Place's direct care team with the essentials to address the immediate needs of women that turn to WLP for help. Whether they're distributing clothing, toiletries, PPE, or gift cards to local coffee shops, interactions with direct care and guests are often the entry points for women to trust WLP. In turn, this trust enables guests to work with WLP and address the outstanding issues in their lives. A gift of $1,000 will make these moments possible.
Finally, a gift of any denomination will support the work WLP does to enrich our community by uplifting women who have been denied their voice. Your gift is a direct action against the inequitable systemic structures that have rendered many of WLP guests unable to provide a healthy life for themselves and their families.
Before we move on to the final portion of the program, we want to highlight the power of the Women's Lunch Place community and helping the organization through the past year. It's been a difficult journey, but we have emerged with a renewed commitment to improving the lives of our guests and fostering a judgment-free environment that is warm, welcoming, and available to any woman who turns to us for help. To everyone in the Women's Lunch Place community, we appreciate your kindness, your empathy, and your support.
As you have heard today, the need for that support is higher than ever, and we urge you to continue your generosity with the gift to Women's Lunch Place before the night is through. Thank you.
As we end our program here today, I want to thank you all for your engagement and investment in Women's Lunch Place. It is through your help that we are able to use evidence-backed methods of holistic care and act as thoughtfully as possible in refining and carrying out our vital work. All signs point to Women's Lunch Place facing an increased demand for our services. As we learned today, the impact of health and community on our lives, and especially the lives of the most vulnerable in our community, is unmatched. We must push forward. The current situation for many homeless women in our city is horrific. Isolation, addiction, and a lack of access to vital resources are only a few of the barriers that these individuals are facing. Women's Lunch Place is uniquely positioned to help these women, and we hope we can count on your continued support so we can offer our services to as many guests as possible in the coming year. To that end, a gift to Women's Lunch Place through the Pick a Prize or Fund a Need button below means so much to our community. For our staff, it validates their tireless efforts across all levels of our programming, from healthy meals to one-on-one advocacy. For our community partners, it allows WLP to collaborate successfully on future projects, like the recent auxiliary shelter with St. Francis House. For our volunteers, it is a reward for their generous efforts, especially as many of them have turned to remote tasks to assist us in COVID-safe ways over the past year. Most importantly, for our guests, your gift shows you understand there is hope, that their strength and resilience throughout the pandemic should be met with compassion and aid. Your gift ensures that in the coming year, they will always have Women's Lunch Place to turn to for a hot meal, a welcoming hand, and expert guidance when and where they need it. Thank you for playing your part in Women's Lunch Place, where food is medicine and dignity is everything. Take good care.